Welcome back to Learn with Roblox. In today's video, we're going to cover circle equations. So let's talk about what the standard form of a circle is and what that equation is. So circles are represented by this equation here. You have x minus h squared and then plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And what can we learn from this equation? Well, if you flip these numbers, that minus h and minus k, and turn them into h comma k, this is just your center now. This is the center of your circle. And then what about that r squared? What can we do with that? Well, if you take the square root of r squared, the square root of r squared is just r. And by r, we mean the radius of the circle. So this equation for a circle gives us the center and the radius of a circle. Let's take a look at a few problems now to learn more about this equation. This problem says, find the equation of the circle shown below. So here I've drawn a circle with a couple points. I've drawn the center and I've drawn one point on the circle. And based on that, let's find the equation of the circle. First, the center, which is right here, is clearly just minus 5 comma 6. So let me write that down. Minus 5 comma 6. You can just read that directly from the graph because this is minus 5 for your x coordinate and 6 for your y coordinate. And then what about this point here? That's minus 2 comma 6 right over here. So how can I use that point to get the radius? Well, notice the radius is just the distance from the center to a point on the circle. And let's think about what that distance is. Well, we don't change our vertical distance. We're at y equals 6 for both those points. So we only move horizontally. And if you go from minus 5 to minus 2, that's a distance traveled of 3 units. Therefore, the radius is just 3 units. So now let's use that to write the equation of the circle. So let me move it on here. Remember, the equation of a circle is just x minus h squared plus y minus k squared plus r squared. Or not plus, equals r squared. And we know our center is minus 5 comma 6. So remember, whenever you're going from the equation to your center or from the center back to your equation, you have to flip the coordinates on the x and the y. So this minus 5 actually becomes a plus 5 for the minus h here. And that plus 6 becomes a minus 6. So I'll have y minus 6 because I flipped the y coordinate, and x plus 5 because I flipped the x coordinate. And then we also know that r is equal to 3. That's the radius. So to go from radius to radius squared, you just square both sides. So r squared is equal to 3 squared. And 3 squared is just equal to 9. That means r squared is just equal to 9. So in other words, the equation of the circle I've drawn above is x plus 5 squared plus y minus 6 squared is equal to 9. That's it for this problem. This problem says plot x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to 9. If I want to plot this circle, I need to know its center and radius. So first, for the center, remember, you just flip the coordinates on the x and the y that's in the parentheses. So in other words, this minus 2 becomes a plus 2. This minus 1 becomes a plus 1. So I'll have 2, comma, 1 is my center. And for the radius, remember that this quantity at the end is equal to r squared. So all I need to do is take the square root of 9 to get the answer for the radius. The square root of 9 is just 3. So the circle has a center of 2, 1 and a radius of 3. Let's sketch that really quickly on a coordinate plane. So I'm just going to go down here and sketch a coordinate plane really quick. So that's my x, and this is my y-axis. So first, we have a center of 2, 1. So I'm going to go 2 units in the x direction, 1 unit in the y direction. This is my center. And then since the radius is 3, that means to draw a circle, all the points on the circle are 3 units away from the radius, or from the center. So what I can do is I can go 3 units up, 3 units down, 3 units to the left, and 3 units to the right, and then just connect those points. So first, why don't I go 3 units to the left, like that. So I can go 1, 2, 3, and that's another point. And then I can go 3 units upwards, so I'll go 1, 2, 3, here's a point. And then I can go 3 units to the left, so 1, 2, and then 3. That's another point. And I can go 3 units down, so 1, and then 2, and then 3. That's another point over there. So now I can just connect all these points in a circle and leave that center there. So I'll just do my best sketch of this. And that's it. That's the circle we have for this equation. So I can just label a few of these points. So this point right here is just 2, 1. This point on the circle was just 5, 1 because I went 3 units to the right. This point down here is just 2, minus 2 because I went 3 units down. This point will just be minus 1, 1 because I went 3 units to the left. And then this point up here is just 2, 4 because I went 3 units upwards. This problem says if the equation x minus 8 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 49 is shifted up by 3 units and to the left by 2 units, what is the new equation? So let me write that down. So we take this equation and we're going to go 3 units upwards. And then we take this equation and we go to the left 2 units. So to figure out the new equation, I'm first going to plot the center of this circle. So remember, to get the center of the circle from this equation, you have to take the numbers inside the parentheses and flip them to get the coordinates of the center. So the center is going to be plus 8 now because I flipped minus 8. And then plus 6 becomes minus 6 for our center. So let me just plot that really quickly. So maybe that's going to be here for 8. Okay, 8 right there. And then minus 6 down here. So our center is probably over there. And let me erase this 8 and right on the top actually. So that's our center. And then what are we doing to it? We're moving it up by 3 units. So I move it up by 3 units. The y coordinate is going to be minus 3 now. And we're moving it to the left by 2 units. So I move 2 units to the left. I'm going to be at x equals 6. So now notice our new center is not 8, minus 6, but now it's just 6, minus 3. So now let's write a new equation for the circle based on that new center. So remember, to go from the center of a circle into the equation, you have to flip these coordinates and put them back into the parentheses with the flipped sign. So remember, x minus h squared, you take the 6 and you make it a negative 6. And then for y minus k squared, I have minus 3, but you have to flip the sign on the minus 3 to make it positive 3. So it becomes y plus 3 squared. And then notice how we didn't actually change the radius of the circle. We were just shifting it up and down. I wasn't stretching or shrinking the circle. So the radius stays the same. So in other words, if the radius stays the same, r squared is still 49 because I'm not changing the radius at all. So this whole thing will just be equal to 49. And that's it. That's the equation of our adjusted circle. This problem says, find the center and radius of the circle with the equation x squared plus 6x plus y squared plus 8y is equal to 0. So we can't find the center and radius just yet because we need to get the equation into this form. So we need to get into x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared form to get the center and the radius. So how can we put this equation into that form? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate this x squared plus 6x. So what you need to do is you need to add a special number here. And once we add the special number, we can factor it into some x plus something squared. So how do I find what number this is that I can add to turn it into something that's factorable? What you need to do is a process called completing the square. To complete the square, it's a very simple 2-step process. You take your number on the x term, or when we're dealing with the y terms, we're just going to do the y term only. So you take your x term, and then you take the coefficient on it, that's the 6 here, and you divide it by 2. So first, 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. Then, with that number you get, you have to square it afterwards. So 3 squared is equal to 9. And this is a number you can add to turn it into something that's factorable. So by completing the square, I know that we need to add 9. But notice how we just changed one side of the equation. I've added 9 to this side of the equation here. I have to add 9 to this side of the equation to be consistent as well. So I'm just going to add a 0 and then I'm going to write plus 9 because we need to add a 9 to that side. But let's go back to this part. we need to factor x squared plus 6x plus 9. To factor this just turns into x plus 3 squared. And a quick trick for getting what this number is going to be is you take this number and divide it by 2. 6 divided by 2 equals 3. That's the number you put in there. So now I have that when we factor the x terms, we get x plus 3 squared. And that's in x minus h squared form. So we're good with the x terms. Let's move on to the y terms. So now I have y squared plus 8y. I need to add a special number to this side, or over here, that will allow me to factor this. So what number do I add? Let's complete the square. First, you do 8 divided by 2 because you take the term, you take the y term and you divide it by 2, or the coefficient. And 8 divided by 2 is just 4. And then you do 4 squared because you have to square the number right afterwards. 4 squared is just 16. So I'm going to add 16 here. And now I can factor this. But before I do that, remember, since I added 16 to the left side, I need to add 16 to the right side as well. So plus 16 over here. But now let's factor y squared plus 8y plus 16. To do that, just simply factor as y plus 4 squared. And once again, the quick trick is you take this middle number and you divide it by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4. That's the number that goes inside there. So now let me write that down. So we have x plus 3 squared plus y plus 4 squared is equal to, we have 0 plus 9 plus 16. 9 plus 16 plus 0 is just 25. And now we're good to go because this is in x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared form. We're done. So now all we need to do is just get the center and the radius. So this is quite simple. For the center, remember, you just take the numbers inside the parentheses and flip them. So you have plus 3 and plus 4. That becomes minus 3, minus 4 as your center. And then for the radius, remember, this thing is equal to r squared. So just take the square root of that number. So take the square root of 25, and that's just equal to 5. So 5 is the radius of the circle, and the center is minus 3 comma minus 4. And we're done. This problem says, find the center and radius of the circle with the equation 3x squared plus 15x plus 3y squared minus 6y plus 6 is equal to 3. So to do this, first let me write down the circle equation we want to get in the end. We want something in the form of x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. Now, first thing I want you to notice is, notice how we have 3x squared and 3y squared, but in our circle equation, we only have 1x and we have 1y. And when you square it, it'll be 1x squared and 1y squared. So we need to get rid of those 3's on the x squared and the y squared. To do that, you just divide by 3 everywhere. So divide every single number by 3, or every single term by 3. So when we do all that work, we'll have 3x squared divided by 3 is just x squared. 15x divided by 3 is just 5x. 3y squared divided by 3 is just y squared. Minus 6y divided by 3 is just 2y, minus 2y actually. 6 divided by 3 is just 2. And then 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1. So this is actually the equation that we're going to need to put into the standard form. So let me erase all that top stuff because we don't need it anymore. So now I need to turn this equation, x squared plus 5x plus y squared minus 2y plus 2 is equal to 1, into standard form. To do that, first I'm going to do subtract 2 from both sides, because remember, there's no numbers, no constants on the left side of standard form. You put all the numbers on the right side to get r squared. So if I subtract 2 from both sides, I'll have this is equal to 1 minus 2 is just minus 1. Okay, next thing I need to do is complete the square with x and y so I can get it into the factored form. So first, I have x squared plus 5x. I need to add a special number that allows me to factor it into x plus h, or minus h, depending on what number it is, squared. So remember, to find that number, you take this number, the x term, or the x coefficient, and then you first divide it by 2, and then you square that number. And then if I do 5 over 2 squared, that's 5 squared over 2 squared, and that's just equal to 25 over 4. So this means the magic number to add to this expression is 25 over 4, and this will allow me to factor it nicely. But remember, if I add 25 over 4 to the left side of this equation, I need to add it over here as well, so I'm consistent. So let me do that. We'll have minus 1 plus 25 over 4. Okay, but let's go back here and factor this. To factor this just becomes x plus, take this number and divide it by 2 as the quick trick, 5 over 2 squared. So let me just erase all this now. I'm going to replace this with x plus 5 over 2 squared. Great. Now let's go to the y terms. I have y squared minus 2y, and I need to add a special number to turn this into y minus k squared. So to do that, you take the number, the coefficient on the y, that's minus 2, you then divide it by 2 to get minus 1, and then you have to square that number. So minus 1 squared is just plus 1. So all we need to do is just add 1 here so we can factor it. If I add 1 here, I have to add 1 to the other side of the equation as well. So I'm going to write plus 1. And then to factor y squared minus 2y plus 1, that simply factors as y minus 1 squared. And using the quick trick, you just take the middle term and divide it by 2, or the coefficient on the middle term. And minus 2 divided by 2 is just minus 1. That's what goes in here. And then I'm just going to erase this up here. I'm going to replace it with y minus 1 squared. Now let's simplify the numbers here. We have minus 1 plus 25 over 4 plus 1. So notice that this minus 1 and this plus 1 will cancel, and we're just left with 25 over 4. So this whole thing is just equal to 25 over 4. Alright, so now we're ready to get the radius and the center of this circle. So for the center, you just take the numbers inside the parentheses and you flip them. So plus 5 over 2 becomes minus 5 over 2. Minus 1 becomes plus 1. So our center is minus 5 halves, comma 1. And for the radius, all you need to do is take your r squared, that's 25 over 4, and take the square root of it. So the radius is just the square root of 25 over 4, and that is equal to the square root of 25 over the square root of 4. And the square root of 25 is just 5, and the square root of 4 is just 4. So our radius is just 5 over 2. So that's it. The center of the circle is minus 5 over 2, comma 1, and the radius is just 5 over 2. This problem says, for what value of a does the circle have a radius of 10? And our circle equation is 2x squared plus ax plus 2y squared plus 8y is equal to 64. So I need to find what value for a gives this circle a radius of 10. To do that, I need to transform this whole equation into standard form, which is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. So I have to wait to find all that, how to transform all that stuff up top into this equation below. So let's work on that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this whole equation by 2, because notice how we have 2x squared and 2y squared. I don't want to work with that. I want to work with x squared and y squared only. So let's divide everything by 2. So let's divide this by 2, divide that by 2, this one by 2, that one by 2, and this one by 2. So if I do that, the new equation I'll have is x squared plus a over 2 times x plus y squared plus 4y is equal to 32, because 64 over 2 is just 32. Let me erase all this up here now. And now let's work with the equation below. Let's transform this into standard form. To do that, I'm just going to first work with the x terms. I need to do x squared plus a over 2 times x. And I need to add a special number such that when I add this number, I can factor it into x plus some other number, whatever that is. To find what special number to add to this, what you do is you take your you take the coefficient on x, a over 2, and you first divide it by 2. And if you do a over 2 divided by 2, that's just a over 2 times 1/2. And a over 2 times 1/2 is just a over 4. But after you divide by 2, you just need to square that number. So a over 4 squared is just a squared over 4 squared. And 4 squared is just 16. So we need to add a squared over 16 to this side. If I add a squared over 16 to this side, I need to add it to the other side as well. So here I'm going to add a squared over 16 to 32. But now to factor x squared plus a over 2x plus a squared over 16, that just becomes x squared, or no, just x, plus a over 4 squared. And the way you can get that easily is you take the middle term, this a over 2x, you take the coefficient and you divide it by 2. So if I do a over 2 divided by 2, that's just a over 4. Remember, we already got that. So we're done factoring all the x terms. I'm just going to rewrite that here. So we have x plus a over 4 squared. And now let's factor the y terms. So I have y squared plus 4y. I need to find some special number to add to this so that I can factor this into y plus some number squared. So to do this, let's complete the square. Take the y term and this coefficient, that's 4, and divide it by 2. 4 over 2 is just 2, and then you need to square that number right afterwards. So 2 squared is 4. So we got the same number again, but that's just a coincidence. That just happens when you have 4y. So I need to add 4 to this side. If I add 4 here, I need to add 4 over there to be consistent. And then now let's factor y squared plus 4y plus 4. That just becomes y plus 2 squared. And the quick trick is you take your middle term, take the coefficient, divide by 2, that leads to 2. So that's how you know what number to put in. And then I'm just going to replace all of this here with y plus 2 squared. So now let's think about this. If this thing has a radius of 10, we know that this whole thing has to equal 100. How do I know that? If you have r equals 10, well then that means r squared has to equal 10 squared, which equals 100. I know that all this stuff over here is just equal to r squared. So therefore, 100 equals r squared, which equals all the stuff on this right-hand side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to set all this equal to 100. So 32 plus a squared over 16 plus 4 is equal to 100. If I simplify this, I'll have a squared over 16 plus 36 is equal to 100. To solve for a, subtract 36 on both sides. If I do that, I'll have a squared over 16 is equal to 64. And then I'm going to multiply by 16 on both sides. Oops. So times 16 times 16. And then if you do that, you'll have a squared is equal to 64 times 16, whatever that is. And then you just need to take the square root of both sides to solve. So that means a is simply equal to the square root of 64 times 16. If you compute this on a calculator, you will get that a is just equal to 32. That's it. That's the a value we need, such that the equation we had at the start over here has a radius of 10. I'm just going to replace this here. So if you have 2x squared plus 32x plus 2y squared plus 8y equals 64, that's a circle with a radius of 10. That's all for this problem. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Thank you for watching.